Hello everyone, my name is Alan Jones and I welcome you to another life story coming to you from Life Stories Worldwide. Our stories go out all over the world and we bring you stories from across the world. We are live on Zoom, Facebook, YouTube and StreamYard. You can also watch us on our website, lifestoriesworldwide.com. It's probably easy to watch on there directly. We bring you stories of people who've gone through all types of struggles in their life, facing rejection, facing different struggles and depression, and how they come through that and how their lives have been transformed. And today, our life story comes to you from Salisbury in the United Kingdom. We have our guest there waiting, Jason Muxworthy. He's going to share his story. Jason was brought up in Swansea in Wales. And he moved into a career of architecture, for which he did for about 25 years before changing his career and becoming a train driver. He went through times of depression and challenges, but he's back doing his train driving. And it's great to welcome you, Jason, to share your story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Alan, for that introduction. And I'll just give you a brief introduction as regards myself. I became a Christian when I was 19 years old as a result of working in an architect's practice in Swansea. Prior to that, I'd just been a person that went to church and was under the impression that you just live a good life and God would let you into heaven at the end of the day. But I had questions. Questions as regards what happens to all these terrible people that have lived throughout history. And God was very gracious, and he sent a man by the name of Hayden Dennis into that office, who was a real, true Bible-believing Christian. And he showed me that there was a total difference between what I was living and what real relational Christianity, a living relationship with the Lord Jesus Christ, was like. And it was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And I wanted to know more about this. I wanted to know more about God's word and the things of God. And he took time, he explained, and I decided at the age of 19 that I was going to give my life to Christ. And yes, there have been rough times, there have been great times, but as I sit here now, I know full well that God was in them, irrespective of however I felt. And I believe that God saved me during a very, very quite a turning point in my life, because I went to university some months after, and to do 3 years studying this particular facet of architecture. And after I graduated, my timing was quite bad, because I graduated in architecture during one of the worst slumps in the building industry in the UK in living memory. I worked at various jobs. I worked as a postman. I worked as a hospital porter. But I did manage to get jobs in architecture, and it wasn't until 1999, after moving away the year previously, and I was living in Surrey in the United Kingdom and working up in London. I went to church one morning, and I was trying out a new church. And what happened? It was January 1999, and I turned up at a Baptist church near where I was living. And I sat down and I thought, I'll just go in, see what the church is like, and dip my toe in the water that way and come out again. Anyway, as I was sat there, a young lady came in and said to me, "Excuse me, is there any room for me to sit alongside you?" And I said, "Yes, sure." And in the back of my mind, I could sense my inner voice saying, "Don't say anything stupid. it could be your future wife you're sitting next to. Well, that girl's Penny. And just over a year later, we got married. So my intention of just going in there, getting on with it, and going out again failed miserably. God had other plans. And as I said, in the year 2000, we got married. Penny was working up in London, and we moved down to near Bristol. And I got a job in a practice there, and it was whilst I was there, I was getting more and more frustrated with the job. I wasn't enjoying it. As I've said, I was trained originally on a drawing board, and when they took the drawing board away from me, I sort of started losing interest completely in it. And we'd felt the move of God for us to move to Bristol in the first place. And we felt that God's hand was in it. And looking back, yes, it definitely was. There was some certain things he wanted to accomplish in our lives, and he did that. But it was in 2012, I was having a bit of a moan about the job to Penny, my wife, and she asked me, "What have you always wanted to do as a job?" And I said, "I've always wanted to be a train driver." And we'd then been married 12 years. And they say some people, unfortunately, their marriages go stale. They can't surprise their better half, other halves at all. But I'm pleased to say, after 12 years of marriage, I was still able to surprise her. She had no idea that I wanted to be a train driver. This is despite the fact that I enjoy model railways. We go visit in we go out on trips on trains and stuff like that. All that comes with being a railway enthusiast. She was utterly bowled over by the fact that I wanted to be a train driver. So she said, "Well, why didn't you apply?" I said, "I tried when I was 16. I said, "You didn't get anywhere. Well, try again." So I did some research, and the long and short of it was, in 2012, I was not only made redundant, but within a few weeks of me being made redundant, which hit me quite hard, actually, I received a letter from a train company inviting me for some aptitude tests. So I went along, and on the day of the interview, these tests, Penny rang me up and said, "I've just had this verse come to me." I said, "Okay, right," and it was from Psalms, and it said, "The stone that the builders rejected had become the cornerstone," and it went on to say, "This is the Lord's work, and it is marvelous in our sight." And that really blessed me. It really touched me, and I went into these aptitude tests, and praise God, I passed. So then I had to go for the interview, and then the medical and everything else that went with it. I managed to find a bit of work in the meantime. But in December 2012, I started my training as a train driver, which took just over a year. And I then took my first train on my own in 2014. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, it was shift work. Yes, they were hard. There were long days, and all that they had to deal with, and different personalities having to deal with those as well. But the fact that I was going into work, driving a train, and then just at the end of the day going home again, for one of the very few times in my life, I felt this is where I'm meant to be. It fitted like a glove. Even when I went to my manager about something, he told me, he said, "You were perfectly suited to being a train driver." Oh, oh, well, thank you very much, I said. And then he came out with the line. He said, you love working on your own and you're a miserable old so-and-so. That was my first backhanded compliment on the railway, of which there are plenty. And anyway, I thought, okay, this works. I'm happy. I'm happy doing this. But in 2016, I'd been talking to a friend of mine, and he from architecture, and he sort of been dropping hints to me about something, and I'm not very good at taking hints. And in 2016, I sort of realized that maybe my thought processes weren't exactly the same as everybody else's. I thought, okay, all right, what does this friend mean by this? So I looked into it, various. I knew full well I didn't have bipolar or anything like that, and I happened upon a test online for high-functioning autism, and I took this test, and it came up positive result. Yes, you have high-functioning autism. Okay, right. I thought that this was a bit of a bolt from the blue for me, and I thought, okay, right. Let's how do we go about this? I chatted to my wife about it, and I said, should I go and get a formal diagnosis? So I did. I went into the doctor, and I thought, oh, I'm wasting my time. I thought, I'm wasting people's time here. Why am I doing this? This is silly. This is ridiculous. It's in my imagination. The doctor called me in, and I went through this. I said, I hope I'm not wasting your time. I said, but I've done some reading and stuff like that, and I said, I'm concerned that I may actually be a high-functioning autistic. And she looked at me and said, yes, you're showing the classic traits of it. She said, I'm a trained psychiatrist. Oh. So I was then referred for diagnosis, and had several interviews and various other things. And then it came back to me saying, yes, it's true. You have a diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome, high functioning autism. And that was a bit of a bolt from the blue. Now, on the railway, we are taught from day one, when you get a diagnosis of anything medical, you go in and tell your manager so that any adjustments could be made or anything like that, whatever medical condition it is. And I thought, well, that's what I'm going to have to do. And I went into my manager. I said, look, I've got this letter. It says this, this, and this. I might as well have told them that I'd come from Mars or grown a second head. They just did not have any comprehension of what I was talking about. Now, given the fact I was just trying to come to grips with this, and as regards to the diagnosis, I was just told, well, you've managed 40 odd years so far, off you pop. Well done. And that was that in itself. I'm dealing with all this information, and now I've just been told to carry on as normal. Anyway, I went in, told my manager, and I had to try and explain to the management what exactly all this was about. And they didn't have a clue. They were going to send me for an assessment at the occupational health, which never happened. But in the meantime, I was then encouraged to actually go for management, because I'd had previous management experience in my job in architecture. And I thought, okay. I thought I was a bit concerned about the way drivers are being treated by management. I thought, okay, perhaps we can make a difference here. Whether it was my vanity or naivety, I don't know. And I started the job as a manager in 2018, and I was progressing quite well, I felt, at it. But in 2019, there were three of us managers in this particular office looking after 30 drivers each. And the other two managers went off on long-term sick leave. And I was left managing 90 drivers on my own. Now, there are regulations to say that managing 90 drivers on your own is illegal. And I said, look, can I have help with this, and this? No. Can I have help with this, and this? No. You've got to do it all on your own. And as you can imagine, this took a toll on my health. And the long and short of it was I walked away from that job because it started getting a very toxic environment. As I said, I was having no help or support. Medically, I'd had to go to the doctors. I'd been signed off sick for at least 2 months because of the stress. And I was, in effect, managed out of the job. And I walked away. I thought, I can't do this anymore. I was quite broken by it because I had allowed the entire job and my interest, it had crept up on me quite unawares that was my all-consuming interest. It had, in effect, become an idol. Now, I was one of those people that always said that, no, I don't have a career, I have a job. I go in, get on with it and go home again. But I'd sort of broken one of my own personal rules, that I'd allowed my work to become all-consuming and what basically defined me. I dressed it up in Christian-type clothing that I was doing. I was showing people that as a Christian, these guys, the guys I was working with, the railway is a very macho environment. They were never going to pick up a Bible. This is what I was looking at, but this is the way I rationalized it. They'll never pick up and read a Bible, but they'll read me and my actions. So that's how I dressed it up. But this job just consumed everything. And with no respite, it just sucked the life out of me. So, as I said, I had to get away from that. And it was like suffering a bereavement. I'll be perfectly honest. It was like suffering a bereavement. I had lost something that mistakenly I thought defined who I was the be all. This was the be all and end all of everything I'd aspired to. But it was like one of those moments when you see in a cartoon, the villain is chasing his prey, and the prey runs off a cliff, flies over the cliff edge onto the next piece of land. The villain follows him and then stops midair and drops into that chasm. That's what it was like. I call it my Wile E. Coyote moment. And I didn't know what to do. I thought, I've got to do something. I've got to do something as regards work. I can't be a useless individual. I must be, as a husband, I should be providing. So I took a job working nights in a supermarket. And it exhausted me even further, both mentally and physically. I had all this time working more or less in isolation in this shop. There were loads of other people around. I was just this person that, well, I was a shell of a person. That's how I felt. And after several months, after about 3 months, it had worn me down to such a point that in November 2020, during my break, we were all given a break at, I think it was just after midnight, I walked up to the stockroom and I attempted to hang myself. I had become that, I couldn't see the point of anything anymore. Yes, I still had a faith that I was clinging to with my fingernails. And as I can remember it as clear as day, I climbed up this ladder. I attached something around my throat and attached that to a structural member. And the next thing I remember was the sound of my breath and the sound of my heart beating. And I opened my eyes and I was lying on the floor. What I'd used had snapped. And I thought, well, if this is heaven, it isn't up to much. It's just shelves filled with the groceries. So I had a moment of sort of coming to. I thought, okay, what do I do now? Okay, I'll go and have a cup of tea. The thought process was quite bizarre. It's just, all right, that didn't work. I'll just carry on with work. And anyway, carried on, finished my shift, went home about 6 o'clock in the morning, went to bed. And my wife was home, Penny was home. And I woke up about 3-4 o'clock. I walked downstairs. She was out in the garden. And she came in. And she said to me, "Oh, how are you?" And I just looked at her. And I burst into tears. And I said, "I'm so sorry," because there was a mark right around my neck. And it really, well, to say it really upset her is an understatement. She was terrified, panicked that I'd done this. And this is all in lockdown now. And I said, "I'll be fine to go to work." I said, "I'll go to work." Went to work next evening. And I went off. And she was beside herself because she was convinced I was going to do it again.